Okay, so thanks everybody for joining us today. We're going to talk about continuous integration. We've just launched a brand new continuous integration piece for our Snapshot tool. We think it's one of the most flexible and effective ways to do continuous integration that you'll find for the Salesforce ecosystem. And we're very excited to show it to you today. Now I'm just going to go through a couple of really quick slides. These will be super fast so we can get to what everybody really wants to see. Just the people talking today, I'm Tom Appleton, and we also have Sridhar with us today, who runs our technical services team. And Sridhar is going to be taking us through the demo and answering all of the tough questions today. So for those of you that may be new to Snapshot, Snapshot is really a full and complete end-to-end org management tool. It has a lot of capabilities to it, and we'll try to give an overview of some of those today while then focusing on the continuous integration piece. But it's a change and release management tool. So it handles things like automatically backing up all of your metadata in an org, letting you compare metadata differences between orgs, deploying metadata from any org or content repository to any org. And of course, as you will see today, it has a full continuous integration piece. So for those that are looking to adopt a continuous integration methodology for your development teams, Snapshot's added a really wonderful piece for that we're going to get a good look at today. Snapshot's also got another side to it that we think really is what makes it that end-to-end and complete tool for managing your Salesforce org. And that is we have over 24 reports that really help you with a lot of the things that lead up to doing a migration or lead up to setting up your continuous integration. And those reports cover everything from optimizing and cleaning up your Salesforce org, like finding unused assets, security, documenting the state of your org for compliance. So lots of the, doing detailed comparisons between in investigative work within Salesforce. So lots of really powerful tools to help you manage and keep your org clean and optimized and documented that you don't get with Salesforce itself. And that's really what we think makes Snapshot such a complete tool, not just a tool for deployment and continuous integration, but also a tool that helps manage the day-to-day life cycle of your org. And for those of you that have entered the world of Salesforce DX, we have very complete Salesforce DX compatibility. So you can create scratch orgs on the fly, pull metadata from scratch orgs, and so forth. So you'll find a really nice integration with DX if you walked that way. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Sridhar here, who's going to step in and give us the demo. So Sridhar, off to you, sir.
Thank you, Tom. Let me turn around and share my desktop here. And you should be able to see my screen. All right,
yes,
so let's jump right into this. So as Tom said, Snapshot here is a complete end-to-end org management tool, which means there are multiple facets to Snapshot. Namely, we have the ability to help you understand how your org is structured through various reports. Pick a org dev, your dev sandbox, or your production org. We have the ability to help you understand what's being used, what's not being used, how things are related to each other, and such. And also from a security perspective. The other facet is the deployment, the change and release management aspect, where you can back up your org, compare what things have been changed, and then migrate things over. So we're going to be seeing all that stuff today and continuous integration as well. So before I go into continuous integration, I'm going to give you maybe a 10-minute overview of the product itself before I jump into the continuous integration feature set. So what you're seeing here is my desktop product, Snapshot. So it's running on my Mac. It's also compatible with Windows. Actually, 90% of our customers run it on a Windows machine. So what you're seeing here are Salesforce metadata stored in content repositories. Could be Git, could be Bitbucket, could be TFS, SVN, doesn't matter. We have the ability to pull metadata from these things and connect them to Salesforce Orgs. So these blue icons are Salesforce Orgs, and these deploy arrows that you see here connect them so you can push metadata from repos into orgs, org to orgs, and onwards onto production, then turn around and check those back into your repos as well, right? The greens and the orange kind of arrows there tell you the state of the deployments. So the last metadata deployment that I did was successful. That's why you see a green arrow here, whereas I did a validate deployment from my dev sandbox to my dev 2. That's why it's still colored in orange. So all of these can be set out right on my canvas right here, or grouped under various folders that you might want to create there. So group away your projects or different customers that you're working on, whatever be your scenario, right? So let's jump right into this. How do you get started? The way you get started is by using the tool palette here and drag over one of these snapshots. So snapshot icon, as I mentioned before, is nothing but a connection to a Salesforce org. So you can take a backup of pretty much anything that you have in your Salesforce org, any packages, profiles, permission sets, all the way to your reports and dashboards and such under folder-based assets here, and take a backup of these things, that which we call snapshots, right? So these are essentially metadata that is getting sucked from your machine onto your, sucked from Salesforce org onto your local machine and put away in a timestamp package so that you can refer back to it as your org changes to see what the state of the org was a week ago, a month ago, or whenever you created your snapshot with. So towards that purpose, we also have the ability to schedule these backups. So I can set up a recurring event there. I want this to start tonight. I want that to happen, say, 10 o'clock every day. So it's just as easy. I set this up and then let that run in my runtime mode there, which means every night at 10 o'clock, it's going to wake up, create a metadata backup of your org, this particular org that I'm targeting right here, new snapshot at ds.com, and then go back to sleep. So it gives me a great backup that I can lean on and use for various purposes. Could be for reporting or for insurance or compliance reasons there, where I need to back away my metadata in case something goes wrong and breaks my business logic and such, right? So back up your metadata. But what can you do with these things? There are various things you can do with. Starting with, you can see all the backups that you have using the time series. And these backups can be used for various purposes, including comparing within the same org using the compare time series and showing you differences. So I can actually start all the way back and compare, so 216 against 94, which is my latest backup, and see what the differences are in my custom object. Or I can go down to fields, or I can select multiple things and create a report to see how or what things changed over time. My custom applications or custom objects, custom labels, anything and everything that I've selected can create a report, and these reports can be exported out. So scenario, you have a way of creating a backup and keeping track of these backups to see what things are different, and that report can also be scheduled. So whenever a snapshot is created, it can create a diff report and send that report to you as an email or post it to Chatter and such. So in essence, think of it as a way of backing up your production org or your high value developer orgs very quickly every single day or every single month, however you have created your backup schedule, and that diffs it and tells you what things have changed. So if you have multiple release teams updating the same production org, this is a great safety feature where the email can be broadcast to the whole group, letting them know that one single team there went and updated your account page layout, and you need to reconcile that with your org before you start migrating your own changes, right? And even there, you don't want to get blasted unnecessarily, so you could just say, tell me only if the metadata itself is different and whatnot, right? You could also use that for various purposes, for things like comparing and migrating that metadata. But before that, if you want to understand how your org is structured, there are various reports. A data dictionary to help you document what objects you have, fields you have, and where they are being used, or field usage, pick list usage, tell you from a data perspective what fields are populated with data or not, and a forgotten assets. This is a fairly new area for us. We got into it about 4 months ago. This is something to help you understand what things are not being used. Think of this as Salesforce Optimizer on steroids. You could pretty much select anything. In this case, I just ran it on my email templates, and it brought back a bunch of email templates that are not really being used anywhere. But then there are other email templates that are being used on workflows, networks, approval process, portals, whatnot. So great way for you to identify what metadata is being unused or underused, so you can then decide what you want to do about it. So if you start off with an optimization scenario, we have great ways of helping you identify unused pieces that are easily culled based upon various phenomena, various methodologies there. This being metadata, you could also run the field usage to identify the same from a data perspective. Also, from a security perspective, there are various reports. For example, the profiles versus permission sets helps you identify the true security assigned to somebody. So here I've run this on my favorite guy, Josh Hyde here, and it crunches through Josh's profile and permission set settings. If I'll go into detailed report there, it tells me Josh has been assigned the custom standard user profile, which gives him no access to the account object. But then there are various permission sets that escalate that access. So great way for me to identify changes that are going on in my org, or identify why somebody has access or does not have access. And you could even reassign users, add permission sets, or remove permission sets, or change profiles right here, right? So great ways for helping you understand the state of the org from an org perspective, from an optimization perspective, or a security perspective. And that includes user activity timeline reports to help you understand what users or admins are doing in your org. It mines the event monitoring logs if you guys have turned on Shields, as well as login history and setup audit trail to glean all that information. And any and all of our reports can be scheduled so you can know what things are happening without you having to go and actively investigate it. That information can be constructed by Snapshot and pushed to you over email or chatter, or saved as a file in your Salesforce content or your particular local folder and such. Right? So great ways for you to understand the org itself. Now, how do you go in and once you understand the org there, how do you go in and push some of the changes from org to org? So that's where the deploy comes into play. And setting up these deployment pipelines that you see here are extremely easy. You use the deploy to simply connect things. It could be a repo to an org or an org to an org. And these arrows have various functionality. It can help you compare differences between orgs, and differences can be at a high level, or you can drill down and see things at a low level, including the XML tips. So I just went into a particular field and see the differences between the field there. I can jump around and see all those differences and kind of iterate through it and see what's going on. That also extends to profiles and permission sets, which we treat as matrices to help you see what's different or what's new. So new items are shown in green, differences are shown in red, and no changes are displayed in gray here. That's for every part of the profile or permission set. Migrating, all of those are very much visual as well. I simply right-click, deploy that metadata. We have the ability to see what things have changed in the org after you created that backup, because we mine the setup audit trail to identify all those changes. And if you so choose to simply move on and migrate those changes, you can migrate any parts of it. You can choose entire objects, add them, or drill down and choose single fields of your objects. And you can see some of these things are already colored to help you understand what things are different or not. And that extends to things like profiles and permission sets as well. You can migrate entire profiles. That includes creating or updating profiles or drilling into them and choosing partials. I can go into the admin profile there and choose only a couple of things that have changed that I want to migrate over, right? Extremely flexible, extremely easy to very visually select different things in your org without you having to jump around. There are also power tools to select them based on a diff basis or a relationship basis. You can delete metadata as well as deploy these metadata pieces, and the deployment includes a great tracker to help you document what things have been changed by whom. So there is a single org where you launch Snapshot from that holds all your deployment logs. That object there has information about who migrated, what they migrated, when they migrated, what worked, what did not work, and those can be a validate migration or transactional migration. We also support partial deploys, right? And you could do some interesting stuff like removing unnecessary references or changing metadata as part of the deployment as such. And that actually makes a very big difference. That tracker that I'm talking about is extremely key for compliance there, because you have one org that stores all the information that helps you create those chain of custody reports. This field was created in the developer org, got migrated over to my QA org, then migrated over to my UAT and then to production. So you can show your auditors your entire traversal, your entire path that your metadata took before it landed on production. So you didn't really break any of the chain of custody reporting. Right? Makes things extremely easy. Now, that flexibility that you get is extremely useful because we actually turn around and use that exact tracker for continuous integration as well. Because we use continuous integration on those deployments, you could actually mix and match. That's really where the flexibility comes into play. You could have developers migrating a whole bunch of stuff from dev into system integration, and then the continuous integration setup there, you obviously have a centralized setup that is monitoring those changes. It can then turn around, collate all those logs, and then move things over to QA, into UAT, into production without much effort. That you do not need a custom setup, a custom way of somebody coming in and entering something new that is directed at continuous integration migration zone. Right? So let's actually, turn around and start talking about continuous integration and how I set things up. As part of continuous integration, we introduced one of the most interesting things here called workspaces. Think of these as different desktops that you might have or different setups that you can now push to people. So here I'm a release manager. I can now export my settings here and then force these settings onto someone else, and they are now forced to use my pipeline instead of them turning around and customizing everything. That can be executed using workspace managers. You could have as many workspaces as you want, and these workspaces, as I mentioned, can be exported, handed over to somebody, and they can turn around and import them and use them. Right? That would include locking changes as well as including credentials. So let's put this into a particular scenario. So I am a release manager. I have created a particular workflow that I decide makes a lot of sense for my deployment pipeline there. So my developers to follow. So I create a QA to UAT to production kind of migration. I can lock my changes, include my credentials, and then export my changes and save it away. And that zip file can be handed over to somebody or brought into a centralized setup. The centralized setup, you can simply import those settings and then establish your pipeline to move forward. So a great way for you to force people to use only things, only the orgs that you want them to use, and deploy things the way you want them to. Right? Now, talking about CI there, along with the workspace manager, I'm just going to simply move over to my CI workspace and start talking about that. So very simplistic setup here just to show you how things work. What I have here is a Git org, Git repository connected to my developer org, which is then connected to my system integration and is connected to my prod, right? So first, Git repository, it's a very standard developer project there. I can go in to kind of show you how things are set up right here. Pretty simple setup here. I'm telling it it's going to be in the metadata API format. It's going to be pulled from a remote repository. Could have just as easily been a local folder. So if you're already working with the Eclipse workspace or something like that, you could always point at that and use that. But in this case, I didn't want to go against Eclipse repository there. I want to go against a remote repo. So I'm going to connect to my Git org, Git repo, and then pull metadata from that and move that over. Right? You could define custom pull commands there. We have provided some templates for you as well. That could be Git, could be Mercurial, Subversion, TFS. It's all command line based, so you can type in whatever makes sense for you, right? And then create a snapshot. What a snapshot does is it turns around and pulls that metadata from the Git repo and then gets it ready for migration. You could also schedule that if you need to, just like you would pull that metadata from a Salesforce org. My developer org is a very simple setup as well. My developer org, I'm grabbing a whole bunch of different stuff, and these are just other orgs. Now, connections, this is really where we're going to jump into continuous integration and show you how the flexibility, how things work there. Continuous integration, upon a right click. And what this is set to do is it now looks at the repo and finds various things that it has access to, and then queries, what do you want to do? And my options are, I want to pull metadata whenever the repo changes, or when something is pushed into that repo by Snapshot, right? In this case, my repo is receiving changes from a whole bunch of different places. Could be a commit that is done by a developer or somebody creating metadata directly on the repo, or any way it comes in there. So I don't want to wait on a deployment. I want to just watch the repo itself. Then it asks you what happens when you're trying to move things over, what happens when things error out. You could halt the entire time, essentially a fatal error. This is serious enough. Stop everything and let the administrator know so they can come in and look at what happened. Or keep trying it, or pause this particular deployment and then let others continue. And that also provides you some notification to let the administrator know, if something is happening there, please come in and handle it. So here I've chosen to watch the repo and then keep trying in case there is a problem. I can also decide what things I want to push over on a continuous basis, various metadata types. In this case, I've chosen only custom objects, and I'm going to allow only creates and updates. I do not want to delete. That's my setting, but if you're preferring to delete as well as create there, so full sync, you absolutely can do that. And that can also bring in any managed metadata or any customizations you place on those managed metadata. Other options that you found with deploy has been directly brought over to continuous integration as well. You can still do validations, do continuous validations, make sure everything works, or just do a straight up transactional deployment into the org, or change everything possible, which is a partial deployment, allow for the partial deployment and move forward. In this case, I've chosen partial deployment. This is simply a developer org. I don't care about any errors there. I will get notified when errors happen. I can use that and move forward. I can test out my settings using the continuous integration button right here. I can also schedule this to move forward. So here I've set up the schedule to start at 10:25. I'm going to update that to start at 10:34 just to be safe there, and then check for changes every 15 minutes. Right? I'm expecting everything to move forward, but just in case something happens, if there is an unsuccessful deployment, I'm asking it to notify me by email. This is through Snapshot. Nothing stops me from turning around and setting up a workflow rule on the deployment object itself to get notified through Salesforce workflow. I can mix and match to get notified about potential problems with my deployments. Right? So very simple setup here. Essentially bringing stuff from my new build dev repo in GitHub and then push that into my developer org. That metadata, when it lands on the developer org, is going to be propagated to my system integration environment through another custom continuous integration setup that I have. This is a Salesforce Org to a Salesforce Org migration, which is simply looking for any new deployments that come up. In this case, I'm not looking at the setup audit trail because I know the data that comes into dev, only that metadata needs to get migrated over. So I'm watching my deployment history. Right? Other things remain the same. I'm going to wait for certain usernames to be allowed to deploy or not, certain job names that I want to deploy or not. In this case, I'm approving everything. So anything that comes into the developer org, if it is a successful deployment, simply propagate that over using my source deployment settings. Meaning, whatever deployment settings was used before, use the exact same deployment settings to move from this particular org downstream. Right? If I want to custom set things up, I also have the ability to do it. So the differences are typically when you go from dev to QA, QA to staging or something like that, you can absolutely use the source deployment settings there. But if you are going from, if you totally go towards the custom continuous deployment scenarios, then you might want to define custom integration settings when you go from your UAT to production, right? Otherwise, test settings might just be fine. And that is also something that can be scheduled. So this also, I will update there, set up 10:35, move forward. The last there, the commit back, system integration, everything is fine. I can then deploy over to prod as well. I'm choosing not to do it, but I am choosing to write that back to a different Git repository, again, using continuous integration there, which waits for a future deployment, watches for deployment history, picks up that job list, and then migrates everything over on a continuous basis. And that's also a schedule. I will update that as well and move forward. With all that set up, let's actually put that onto a runtime mode here. So what I am going to do is actually kick the start off. There you go. It's actually running right now. To make sure, if there is any things that's happening there, it will grab all that metadata, push that over, and then goes back into wait mode here. That's the simplicity of the setup. What I am going to do is just to simulate how this works there. I'm actually going to make a change to my Git repo to show you how all this stuff works. To do that, I'm actually going to create a brand new object to show you how things get picked up. So I'm going to create a new file. I'm going to grab the metadata that I have here. I'm going to call it. So it's already set up in my new build of org there, unpackaged objects. I'm going to call it continuous object demo __c. So standard metadata API set up there. This is typically stuff that you would do in your org itself, and then check that metadata into your repo. I'm circumventing that procedure by actually creating this directly on the Git repo itself. Nothing different. I'm going to commit that file. So new commit, just now, I just created a brand new object. So what that means is when I put it into runtime mode, let's actually get out of that. All right, great. So it's now waiting for the change there. It's going to watch for the change, check every 15 minutes. So it's now in the Git to dev. It's going to pull that changes from Git, push that into dev. That will get propagated from dev to system integration and then return back. So when I test it, it'll actually start pulling that metadata. So it runs that, finds that there is a change. So it's pulling that metadata from Git, get that metadata, and that will be pushed into my developer org here shortly. So it's a live demo there. We'll see what happens. So it's waiting on the Salesforce server to check on the other side to see if there are any changes on the developer org side. There we go. It's found some differences there. It's starting the deployment. So the object there is now getting migrated. That object migration is now done. So let's actually go see what happened. So that's my developer org. And the object that we just defined there was continuous object demo. We will look for a continuous object demo. There is no continuous object demo. So we'll refresh it. Okay, there we go. Object manager. Let's see if that worked. There we go. Continuous object demo that was just created, and that has all the fields that I had defined, brought in. So that worked. So let's test out the next piece there. And my log says nothing was done there because the integration was successful. The next piece there is the actual propagation of those changes from dev into system integration. So I'm testing that to make sure everything works. So I'm actually forcing that to work instead of waiting for the time to come up. So it's now taking a backup of the source, taking a backup of the destination. It identified some changes on my source, and it's deploying those changes from dev into my Sridhar org. Wait for Salesforce to complete. It's reusing the same changes, same settings that we had from the repo into the org itself. Both of them continue to show green, meaning everything worked. If there was a problem, the color of it would change to red and it would send me a notification. So let's go see the change come over. So that's my Sridhar org. Again, no demo object. Refresh. And the continuous demo object came over, just got created, and all my fields and all that stuff came over. I can go look into any of this metadata to see when this was created. So this was actually just done. So it's all a live demo of what we did before here. And that's all happening in a continuous basis. So if we wait for that time to happen, it would do the exact same thing, which is pull up the metadata from Git, push into a developer org, which then gets propagated. The same settings gets reused to propagate those changes from dev to a system integration, which can then be written back into Git as well on a continuous basis, on a timed basis. So it makes for a great way for you to combine what you guys are already doing today, which is your deployments that are happening from org to org, or from your Git repo or TFS repo or any repo, Bitbucket, or anything that you might have into your org. It has the ability to pull those changes and then deploy them on a continuous basis. And you don't have to really do any sort of coding, muck around with any XML or any of that stuff. This is designed for an administrator to integrate with their current process. Just put that on, it's a kind of like a layer that you lay on your deployment process to make it continuous, and you still have all the notifications, all the updates that you would expect in case there are problems whatsoever, right? And everything can be done in multiple ways. In other words, it can watch for deployments to happen, or watch for changes to be done in the org itself or in the repo itself, right? So whether you're doing changes directly in the org, using setup there, you can use the setup audit trail to pull up those changes, or watch for deployments that happen using Snapshot to pull those things up and then move those over. That makes for an extremely flexible continuous integration that I have found anywhere out there. That is the feature that Snapshot brings in through this update, in addition to our org management and optimization feature set that we already possess in Snapshot. With that, I'll hand it back to you, Tom.
Thanks, Sridhar. If you could stop your share there, sir. Thank you. Okay, great. Thanks, Sridhar. That was a great demo. I hope everybody got a great look at our continuous integration solution. What we're going to do here really quick is we're just going to talk about a few upcoming events that we're going to be at, and then we're going to answer some questions. We've had some Q&A coming in while we've been rolling here, so we're going to get to those. Okay, so if you're not following us on Twitter and you tweet, then you can follow us on Twitter. We're at Metazoa4SF. And on there, we'll keep you up to date on all these features like continuous integration. You'll know before the webinar because we'll post them there first. And so if you're an existing customer, you want to keep up on the latest features, that's a great place to be. If you want to see some great articles and information on release management and managing your Salesforce org, we also post lots of blogs and other content. So you'll also see this Twitter handle on the next slide. So we'll go ahead and head there. So a little contact info at the top if you need to get in touch with us. Upcoming events, we're super busy in the Salesforce ecosystem. So of course, we're going to be at Dreamforce here in a few weeks. We have two booths. We have a big old booth and a smaller booth. So you can see us at booth number 1637 or 242. We're going to have a bunch of killer giveaways. We've got cool tchotchke, some really cool giveaways, a bunch of stuff going on. And if you're going to be at Dreamforce, come by and see us, and we'll be glad to talk to you and catch a beer after. And then after that, we're also going to be at Florida Dreamin' in Orlando at the beginning of November. And then in the middle of November, we'll be at Northeast Dreamin' in New Hampshire. So come and see us at all these places. We'll have booths all across the board. Also at Dreamforce, we'll be in the Demo Jam. And we're also doing, we're on the agenda for a 20-minute presentation that our CTO is doing, which would be great as well. So come and see us. We'd be glad to talk to you. So with that, I'm going to get on to the Q&A here. So we've got some questions. First question here, Sridhar. For any deployment, can you build a backout package that will reverse the deployment if things are found to be out of whack? If things get messed up, can you have a rollback essentially?
Absolutely. Part and parcel of Snapshot is the ability to roll back a deployment. One of the things to be remembered there is with Salesforce, it's kind of a stream, right? You never step into the same stream twice. So there is no reversing the stream there. However, you can create a package to back out a previous deployment that was made. So it's essentially another migration that overwrites the previous migration to bring you back into original state, and that is possible using our rollback deployment feature set.
Great. So the next question is, are these snapshots stored on my machine and not in the cloud? And the answer is they could be in either. So yes, Snapshot, what you saw Sridhar using today is a desktop application. And those snapshots are being stored locally to his machine. We have you can import them, export them, share them with other users, all that kind of stuff. But that said, it's very easy to set up Snapshot to run in the cloud. And certainly when you're talking about continuous integration, a lot of our customers do that hybrid model where they will set up Snapshot to run. You can set it up on a VM internally, your own machine, or you could set it to run on a VM on Amazon Web Services or Microsoft Azure. It'll flexibly install and run on pretty much any cloud platform. And so a lot of our customers have that hybrid model. They've got a VM running in the cloud that's doing all their automated backups and their continuous integration. And they can log into there and grab those snapshots and take them down locally to work with if they want. And then a lot of their users have a local copy of Snapshot on their desktop where they're managing a lot of their day-to-day changes or on-demand or ad hoc deployments, stuff like that. So Snapshot's super flexible. That's kind of the way we come at it. You can put it in the cloud and run it in a centralized place, and you can also run it on your desktop. So the next question is, is there an add-on price for continuous integration? So to answer that question, the answer is no. Snapshot, we call it the only complete end-to-end org management tool because it covers so many bases. It's not just a continuous integration solution like you'll see out there. It's not just a org reporting tool. It does all of that, documentation, org reporting, optimization, cleanup. It does ad hoc deployments, comparisons, investigation work, and it has a completely robust, as you saw today, continuous integration tool. So we're really giving you the entire toolbox of tools for an administrator or development team, or both, if you have both in your organization, to really manage all of the different aspects of those parts of your org, rather than just a single tool that, say, only does continuous integration. So it's all for one. You buy Snapshot and you get all of those capabilities, not an add-on cost. Okay, so next question. The source can be either an org or a Git repository to be your primary starting point to compare against, correct?
That is correct. Anything can be your starting point there. If you want to start from a repo as your source of truth and then migrate into a Salesforce Org, that's perfectly fine. If you want to use a Salesforce Org as your starting point there and then move to another org, that's perfectly fine as well. You can mix and match. Yeah,
I was just going to say it's not just for migration, that's also for comparison. So you could compare between your metadata in a repository and metadata in a Salesforce org, or you could compare between two Salesforce orgs, etc.
That's correct.
Great. Thanks, Sri. Next question, I'll throw this one to you, Sridhar. How does our continuous integration differentiate from other continuous integration solutions out there?
I think you talked about that previously there, but I'll echo some of your comments there. First, I want to point to the flexibility of things. You don't have to follow a particular path to open up a particular metadata to be placed in a continuous integration path. So anything a developer migrates can automatically be picked up by the continuous integration set up there and then migrate or propagate it downstream. Or if you want to turn around and say, oh yeah, after this point, I don't want to migrate things in a continuous way. I want to stop it and then do manual deployment. You want to mix and match any particular way there, that's perfectly fine. And as the previous question I was asked there, where do you want to start? If you want to start from a repo, you could do that. If you want to start from a Salesforce org, you could do that. And you can compare against any particular piece that you want and then move forward. And bring that back to some of the comments that you were talking about there, Tom. The additional functionality that is brought in. It's not just a continuous integration product, and that is all it does. It provides you multiple, it's a full-featured product for org management, right? You could do continuous integration, you could do deployments, you could do org comparisons, you could do org optimizations and org reporting to help you understand how your org is structured and what things needs to be optimized or not. That full-featured product set there, there's nothing else out there that can give you that much functionality in one bundle, right? For no extra price. That makes a huge difference, and that's really our differentiator.
Thank you, Sri. So here's another one. Is there an option to do an incremental deploy, just pulling things that have changed since a defined commit or time frame?
Absolutely. You don't have to say, continue deploying anything that comes in. You want to pinpoint a particular commit or a particular deployment and do only that, or part of it, you could absolutely do that. You do not, just because a deployment set had objects and profiles and things like that, a whole bunch of different things in there, the entire thing does not need to go over. You can totally stop it and say, I want to migrate only object from this point on, all the profiles and the classes and whatnot, leave that behind. You could parse these things any way you would want to. And that's, again, going back to our flexibility mantra. It works with what you're looking for it to do.
Great. Thank you, Sri. So we also have questions on pricing. So for a price for you, we have two types of pricing that we offer. One is org-based pricing. So that just takes the size of your Salesforce production org, how many active user licenses you have, and it puts you into a pricing tier. And for that tier, you get unlimited users, training, support. So basically all you can eat. And then we also do price per seat. Our pricing, it starts at about $250 per user per seat. So you can reach out to us, and if you have, the truth is the org-based pricing generally is going to be a better deal if you have, more than a small handful of users. Small handful of users, the seat-based pricing makes a lot of sense. But if you're a bigger company, or you have, let's say you got 5 admins and 5 developers, or maybe you have 20 admins and 20 developers, or like some of our customers, even more than that, the all-you-can-eat pricing is almost always going to be a much better deal. So we try to be really flexible with both of those pricing models so that you can, get a deal that works for you. And we think that should be competitive versus any solution that you'll see out there. So if you reach out to us, just reach out to us at sales@Dream Factory, and we'll get back to you and give you pricing for you specifically. Just tell us what your situation is, how many users you have, kind of what your org size is, and we'll get you all the pricing and what the best deal is. Okay, great. Well, thanks everybody for coming today. It's been a great session, some great questions. We very much appreciate it. And I want everyone to have a great day, and please take a look at Snapshot. We'll leave the contact info up here for a little bit in case you want to jot me that down. But thanks everyone. Have a great day, and thank you, Sridhar, for the demo.
Thank you.